Humans. We stand out when compared to every other animal on the planet. But are we really that different? We think that we are vastly more intelligent because we build cities, we cure disease, and we have spread across every corner of the globe. And for thousands of years, we have considered our place in the universe, considered the question, why are we here? And we have assumed that this makes us fundamentally different from every other species on the planet. What if we are wrong? The longer that we study animal behaviour, the harder it gets to draw the line between us and them. Are we really that different? Are we really as special as we like to believe? How clever are these creatures, and when does intelligence bridge into consciousness?
Well, there's a very broad message in that learning how close to us in so many ways these amazing beings are, it's a little humbling because we're not quite as different from the rest of the animal kingdom as we used to think. And I believe that if that message comes home to us, it will lead to new attitudes to all the other amazing non-human beings with whom we share the planet today.
I'm just going to start by saying I'm obviously not a biologist. I am literally just some bloke who stood in front of a bookshelf talking to you. So we're going to go into this together and figure out, are we really special? At the start of my video on belief, I asked if belief was the thing that set us apart from animals, and it sparked a question in me. Are we actually even different from animals? Ever since I watched the documentary Blackfish, I have been fascinated by orcas. The more I learn about them, the more fascinated I get. I could stand here and just reel off facts about them all day, but the thing that actually really drew me in more than anything was their intelligence. They are the second most widely spread mammal in the world, and they dominate every single ecosystem that they're in. What makes me ask the question on their intelligence, it isn't just how they hunt or their language, but it's on how they feel. Like, orcas have big brains. In their brains they have certain cells which are also found in humans, and they're called spindle cells. And they're linked to empathy, social awareness, emotional decision making. But the other thing that they have is something which humans don't really have. It's called a paralimbic lobe. And it's the part of the brain found in whales and dolphins, and it's like a highly developed area which sits sort of between the thinking and the feeling part of the brain. Scientists don't fully know what it means, and obviously we can't feel what it's like to have it. But how it's interpreted is an orca's emotions and thoughts are way more interconnected than us humans could ever understand. One of the things that I saw, which made me realize that actually we're probably not so different, was a case of a captive orca named Katina in SeaWorld of Orlando. She had a calf in 1985, and that calf was nicknamed Baby Shamu. And then in 1990, they took Baby Shamu and moved her to SeaWorld, Ohio. And she was about 4 years old. What we have to bear in mind is that mothers and children in the orca world, they will stay in the same pod for life. Not just until they reach maturity. A calf and a mother, they will stay together for decades upon decades upon decades. They're just raised by their parents until the parent dies, basically. So Katina had her 4.5-year-old calf taken away. The trainer of Katina, Carol Ray, said that she just stayed in the corner of the pool.
Katina was generally a quiet whale. She was not a really vocal whale. After Kalina was removed from the scene and put on the truck and taken to the airport. And Katina, her mom, was left in the pool. She stayed in the corner of the pool, like literally just shaking and screaming, screeching, crying. Like I'd never seen her do anything like that. And the other females in the pool, maybe once or twice during the night, they'd come out and check on her, and she'd screech and cry, and they would just run back.
You know, it's heartbreaking. You can see so clearly that these animals think and feel emotions at the same level as us. It's so obvious that the whales at SeaWorld felt grief. And for me, it's a huge indicator that they have the emotional intelligence to understand the passing of time and the implications of actions. So, do they see a crane and know exactly how it's powered and operated? Well, no, obviously, but they see their baby leaving the pool and they realize that they're never coming back. Orcas show that they have an immense emotional capability, probably beyond what we know. And they have an ability to problem solve beyond most other mammals when it comes to catching and finding prey. What makes them so smart? Is it just really simple? They have a bigger brain. 4 times bigger than ours, in fact. So obviously, more neurons. And more neurons means more capacity for thought. Easy, case closed. Bigger brains does help, but it doesn't automatically mean smart mind. If that was the case, then sperm whales would be the greatest thinkers on Earth. And I'm sure they are way more intelligent than we humans will give them credit for. But I also don't think they could conceive the idea of a mobile phone or a rocket into space. I do think that more hardware, it does help. Most bigger brained animals show levels of intelligence that us humans overlook. People who spend a lot of time with elephants say that they are fiercely clever and have like complex personalities and complete self-awareness. Elephants have been observed using a mirror to investigate a mark on its body. And in one experiment, they had a food tray connected to 2 ends of a rope. And you needed the rope to be pulled by 2 people or 2 elephants to get the food. And not only did the elephants realize that the food tray needed to be pulled by the rope, but they also worked out that they needed to wait for the partner to pull at the same time. It's pretty clever. Us humans, we love to make an effort to try and test animal intelligence, and we have done rigorous tests, probably more than ropes and food trays. But one of the problems with testing animals' intelligence is that humans are the ones designing the test. So we actually decide what counts as clever. Can it recognize itself in the mirror? Can it solve a puzzle? Can it understand human language? In the 1960s, researchers became so convinced that dolphins might possess a human-like intelligence that one experiment involved a woman living almost full-time with a dolphin. The house was literally half filled with water. What they were trying to do is they were trying to teach it to communicate using human speech. Her name is Margaret Howe-Lovat, or Lovat. And she never actually proved anything, and she got into all sorts of trouble with the ethics concerning a relationship with the dolphin. And she did end up having her funding pulled. If you actually want to know what happened in that, I encourage you to look up that story after this video, because God, it is a weird one. But ultimately, one thing is clear. The bigger brains do mean something. But what about animals with small brains? Some of these animals, especially birds, they have remarkably small brains, and then they show massive amounts of intelligence. These crows understand that dropping objects into water raises the level, but they go even further. They actively choose solid objects over hollow ones, showing that they are not simply copying a trick, but responding to how water displacement actually works. Parrots have shown a similar ability to understand rules rather than simply memorizing a routine. In this experiment, they were taught that different shapes and colours represented different rewards, their favourite food, an ordinary piece of food, or nothing at all. The blocks are then placed in different positions and rearranged between each attempt. Yet the parrots consistently select the block linked to the highest reward, regardless of where it appeared. They had learned that the meaning belonged to the object itself, not the position. Crows and parrots and many other birds are just overlooked. But God, look how clever they are. And that's probably because we associate bigger brains with intelligence. But it's not the case. So, how small can you go? How smart are the smallest of brains? These bees were taught to roll a ball into the center of a target in exchange for sugar water. At first, they watched the task be completed by other bees, but then a model bee, and then a hidden magnet. But once they understood the goal, they didn't simply copy what they had seen. They were given several balls, and they consistently chose the one closest to the target, regardless of its color. They were not memorizing one movement, they were finding the quickest solution. These tiny, tiny creatures still show that they can learn, adapt, and plan. So it's clear that the neuron count isn't where the intelligence comes from. It's obvious that intelligence doesn't just sit in the brain. It must emerge from the relationship between the body and the world around it. But what happens when the neurons don't interact with the world around them? What happens when the brain doesn't inhabit a body? Okay, so it's not exactly a floating brain outside the body, but in 2022, a group of scientists grew a small network of neurons on a silicon chip. It had no body, no eyes, no hands, nothing. It had no way to experience the world. And then the people running the experiment connected this tiny group of cells to a game of Pong. Pong is probably the simplest form of computer game. Released in 1972 by Atari, it is literally just up and down. Basically no graphics, just stop the ball from passing your side of the screen. They hooked it up, and by having the game send electrical signals to the chip, then the chip sends signals back. Over time, this little silicon chip of brain cells got better at the game of Pong. Now, it's not because it understood the game or it had a desire to win. It's because when neural tissue is connected to feedback, it will always organize itself and will adapt and learn, even without a brain or a body. Crazy as it sounds, this wasn't the first time that something like this had been done. Years ago, in 2004, scientists grew rat neurons onto an electrode, and then they co-landed a plane in a simulator. Another group in the University of Reading made a robot called Gordon, who was controlled by cultured rat neurons by Bluetooth from a petri dish. They used Bluetooth to allow this petri dish of tissue to control the movements of the robot. And again, over time, through repetition and chemical or electrical feedback, the living brain of the robot was able to learn and navigate around rooms. And if that didn't seem weird enough, have you ever heard of organoids? Organoids are a mini 3D tissue culture grown from human stem cells. The stem cells are essentially put with the right ingredients and they will go through a biological process called self-organization, and which basically means they grow themselves. Depending on the ingredients, they will grow themselves into different parts of the body. So the stem cells hold the genetic blueprint needed to build the body, and when put in the right environment, they will mimic an early developing embryo. They will spontaneously divide and change into different brain cell types, and they will move into their correct positions like layers of a cerebral cortex. Scientists are connecting them to computers, and this is a full research field in the effort to search for intelligence. Please remember, I am still not a biologist, and this is not science fiction. Organoids probably deserve their own video, but they are mad, and they make us start to consider a really uncomfortable question. When does stimulus become intelligence? And when does intelligence become consciousness? I reckon we'd probably cross a line into intelligence when these organoids stop just blindly reacting to stimuli and start learning. By wiring them into a computer, scientists have taught cells to play games because the neurons receive electrical data, process it, and then they physically rewire their connections to get better at whatever game or task they're given. That is demonstrating biological intelligence. But I don't think that it crosses the line into consciousness. Because these things lack a brain stem, they don't have any pain receptors, they lack complex neural highways, they can't feel, suffer, or have a subjective experience. They are highly intelligent biological processes, but they don't have self-awareness, so they're not conscious. And this is where I find myself all the time. You dig a little deeper, and then when you hit consciousness, boom, hard stop. Testing isn't the way. But when we observe behaviors, we understand that there are levels of intelligence. But consciousness, that is the biggie, that is the big mystery. When does it start? Is an earthworm conscious? At the start of the video, I asked you a question. Are us humans really that different from the rest of the animal kingdom? And I really thought that I would finish with an answer, but instead I've ended up with more questions. Orcas grieve. Elephants recognize themselves. Crows build tools, bees can learn, even tiny little clusters of neurons can organize themselves and adapt. For so many years, we've been trying to figure out where animal stops and human begins. But it isn't the right question. I think the real question is trying to understand where consciousness itself begins. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to find that out. That is my mission for this channel. So if you made it here, like the video, subscribe, because we are going to figure it out one way or another.